Zach LaVine entering year 2 of his 5-year max contract coming up this season. Gentlemen, I thought I was pretty pleased with what we saw from Zach LaVine at the back half of last season. Really, just like from December on, Zach had himself a very solid year after knocking off the rust from his offseason knee surgery. But he, as one of the leaders of this team, fell short in making that a playoff team again after they finally managed, after many years of failure with Zach being one of this team's best players, failing to make the playoffs. They get there, they falter back last season. What do you gentlemen want to see specifically from Zach LaVine this upcoming season, Mr. Gottlieb?
So I think as we enter year 3 of the Zach and DeMar tandem, one of the things that I think we've talked a lot about, but certainly the thing that I think is most important to these two figuring out how to play alongside one another is going to be Zach moving more off ball. Zach is an alpha scorer. He wants to be that guy, and I think he has proven that he can be that guy, and he can do it well. But I think, unfortunately for him, or maybe, fortunately for the Bulls, unfortunately for him, given the way that he wants to play, because of his versatile shooting skill set, the Bulls need to kind of run him off of more screens. I think they need to add movement. They need to add motion to their half-court offense. They need to add some chaos. They need to add guys who can create offense while off the ball. Because as we've talked about so many times, it's a lot of standing around. It's a lot of like Chicago action into a dribble handoff, into a DeMar isolation, or a zipper into a DeMar elbow jumper, or Zach doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. And that's just predictable. I think we saw at the start of last season, the motto was randomness and not being predictable and not over-relying on DeMar. And we kind of got away from that, but I think for the most part it was because DeMar got hurt in the second half of the season, and then we just did the same thing with Zach. So for me, what I want to see is more off-ball movement, and I think that starts with Zach. I think he has the responsibility, because he's the best at it on the team, and not just the best on the team, but one of the best players in the league at that sort of thing. He needs to be the one that takes it on, whether he wants to or not. I think there's probably a part of him that wants to be just like that isolation scorer, that Mamba mentality, elbow jumper kind of guy. And like I said, he's more than capable of doing that at a high level. But for the Bulls to take the next step, I think he needs to learn how to play. I shouldn't say learn how to play, but I think he needs to lean into more playing off ball, moving without the ball, because I think that elevates DeMar. I think it elevates the rest of the team, and that's kind of what we need to see out of him. So looking into some of the numbers here, Zach last year played, so Synergy categorizes different plays based on like isolation. They have transition, pick and roll ball handler, spot up three, and they have off screen. So last year, Zach averaged 5.8% of his total possessions off screen. The year before that, 6.9. So last year it went down by over 1%, and I think he needs to get that number up, not just back to where it was, but above there. I want to see like 7.5% of his offensive possessions coming off screens. He's really good at that. Last year, the efficiency wasn't great, but he has shown in the past that he can be very efficient, and I think the Bulls need to lean into him doing that in order to create some more chaos in the half court. So over 7.5% of his offense coming off of screens.
I like that. Dave, what do you think about that?
I think that's really smart, and that makes a ton of sense, what he's saying. For me personally, I don't want – it's not a stat I want to see Zach LaVine have or improve on that I feel he needs to prove anymore. I've seen him put up tremendous numbers through his career here in Chicago. Every year, it's a 50, 40, 80 year for Zach LaVine, or close to a 50, 40, 90. Like we've seen him be special with the numbers that he's put up and the way he plays for this team. For me, it is just simply time to make him all NBA player. It is time for third team all NBA. That's my proof for Zach LaVine. It is time. It is time for that. The numbers all the time, that's what he does. He puts them up. We see those numbers. He is an awesome, tremendous player. Now I need it to affect everything on that team. That's what I want. I want that consistency every single time of teams completely worried about Zach LaVine and what he's going to do on the floor. I want that recognition for Zach LaVine. We've seen him get it for the All-Star. We've seen that. We've seen him get it for the gold medal. We've seen that. Now it's time for him. It's been 10 years. He's been in this league 10 years, bro. It is time for Zach LaVine to start getting that third team All-NBA stuff, man. That is what I want from Zach LaVine. I know he's going to score. I know he's going to I know his three-point percentages are going to be amazing. I know that, the team is going to, play around him. I know he's going to, create his own shots. I know he's going to do all those Zach LaVine things. I get that. And that's amazing. And I can't wait to see more of it. And hopefully there's an improvement on that. But for me, I don't care about the numbers anymore. For me, it's about that cold, hard fact now of when I'm going down your resume. Okay, what did those numbers equate to for you? I need to see that all NBA stuff next to Zach LaVine, man. That's what I want to see. That kind of domination happen. The same Zach LaVine I saw when they played Toronto is the Zach LaVine I want to see all season long. That same Zach LaVine I saw the second half of the year. That's an all-NBA player. That's the Zach LaVine I want to see for this season, man. So that's what I want him to prove this season. Give me that all-NBA team. Give me that third all-NBA team thing for Zach. That's what I want.
I think that's a really good point. And when you say the second half of last season and that Toronto game, what's the common denominator there? It's winning. The Bulls won in Toronto. They won 14 out of their 23 games to end the year. I think winning games at a high level will get Zach onto an all-NBA team. I think that's ultimately what needs to happen.
You could make an argument that his stats were worthy of being considered a candidate for all NBA third team.
The all NBA guards is loaded.
It is really hard.
Loaded.
It is so hard to become an all NBA guard in the league right now. But he put together a really impressive stretch of games where if you were looking at that and just didn't have the rusty part to begin the season, that was all NBA caliber stuff. We've got some people chiming in the comments with what they want to see from Zach this year. Sports Chicago Style saying, Zach going to play D this year? Question mark. Sung Hyun saying, all I want from Zach is a 40-20 season playing D. What does 40-20 season mean?
40 points, 20 rebounds.
I don't know.
That's bold. Can you clarify what you mean by 40-20? So a couple people calling for defense from Zach. I thought about going on the defensive end with my goal for Zach, but I didn't. And here's why. I think that we've seen Zach LaVine make some strides to improve his defensive game. Some effort. And we've seen evidence of him becoming a slightly better defensive player. Bulls fans who want Zach to be some sort of all-defensive team candidate kind of player, I just don't think that's going to happen.
Well, it's also the Bulls are a good defense with him being a mediocre defender.
Bingo. What we need him to be is elite offensively as opposed to just really, really good offensively. Zach taking that leap, to me, is more useful to this team winning games than people who want to bitch about Zach LaVine's defense. Pardon my French. But y'all know who you are out there. And I'm not saying you guys specifically in the comments are bitching about his defense, but come on. Zach LaVine gets hounded by NBA fans and Bulls fans for his defense when tons of NBA scorers are just as guilty of taking defensive possessions off the way that Zach does, the way that his teammate DeMar DeRozan does. So because of that, I hear what you're saying, but no, I'm focused on Zach becoming elite offensively. Our guy Throwing Hat suggesting he wants to see a 50-40-90 season from Zach, pointing out that he is almost there. He's come very close in each of the last few seasons. Sports Chicago Style says less hero ball from Zach. So here's where I went with this. The part about Zach's game that does irritate me, that I think could be fixed, and if at least partially fixed, take him from being a very good offensive player to a truly great offensive player, is cutting down those unnecessary turnovers. Unforced turnovers. Dude, there are no excuses for Zach LaVine to not have elite ball handling. We've seen his usage percentages come down these last couple of years with DeMar DeRozan in the fold, and his turnover percentage has dropped a little bit, coinciding with the drop in his usage percentage, which you expect to see, and it's good that it did. I think it can drop even further, assuming that the balance of who's getting how many touches and usage percentage between DeMar and Zach stays kind of where it's been for the last two seasons coming into this third season as teammates together. So last season, he had a turnover percentage of 11.0. 11.0 per 100. The season prior to that, 11.2. Those 2 seasons before DeMar, it was up at 13.9, 13.3. The 18-19 season, 14.2. So he's cut down the turnovers, which is the other thing, along with his defense, that Bulls fans have harassed him about. I want to see that turnover percentage drop from 11 to under 9.5. I think that is a realistic goal we can ask of Zach LaVine to truly be an elite offensive weapon for this team, an all-star caliber offensive player who can shoot at high volume from anywhere on the floor, can get to the rim, can be productive off the ball, can be productive on the ball. You know what stops you from being as productive as possible on the ball? When you have silly shit turnovers 2 or 3 times a game and you got me pulling my hair out. Cut those down. That's what I want to see from Zach finally. Like you said, Dave, you're entering year 10. Enough of the silly turnovers.
And to be fair,
so wait,
Zach
what
has
was the
gotten a lot
exact
better. I know
number?
you said
What
that.
was the exact number?
9.5 or fewer turnover percentage. So less than 9.5% turnover percentage.
Just tacking onto that, I mean, I do think Zach has gotten a lot better. Obviously, there's room for growth. But over the last 5 years, this is by far the lowest number it's been in terms of turnover percentage.
Yes.
While his usage remains really high. So I do think he's gotten a lot better. But I think to add to that, where people get frustrated is the clutch turnovers in particular. And I think a lot of times people point to like one game or, you know, one bad turnover in the clutch, just like one possession, and say, oh, Zach's not a clutch player. He can't do this. He can't do that. And I think there's, whether or not there's truth to that, like it's unfair to just blanket statement say Zach is bad in the clutch because of one moment or one possession or one game. So I wanted to look at some of the numbers, and he actually did perform really poorly in the clutch last year. So the numbers do match the eye test there. He was 41% from the field, 18% on threes, 18%, 6 of 33 total on threes. But to me, it's the 11 assists to 13 turnovers in the clutch last year. And so speaking to your point, I mean, Vooch and DeMar combined only had 12 turnovers.
Wow.
So Zach needs to cut those down, I think, in key moments in particular. And then all these things that we're talking about are going to come together where he's more efficient. He's putting up better scoring numbers. He's putting up better assist numbers because he's not turning the ball over. The Bulls are winning games more because they're not turning the ball over in, you know, clutch situations where they struggled mightily last year. Mm-hmm. And they start winning more games. And then maybe you do see him end up on a third-team All-NBA. So I all these things come together, and I really like the ones that we picked out because I think they – If Zach can really hone in on those things, and I know it's year 10, and I know he kind of is who he is as a player this year, but you can always add to your game. You can always get better. And if he can start to figure some of these things out, I think the growth is going to take like a big jump. It's one of those things where like a tiny tweak can really have a big impact on both winning and, you know, individual numbers. And I think that's what's going to lead to team success and an all NBA caliber season from Zach.
Yeah, that's dead on right there, Will, man. And I love the way you pointed that out, like, because that's the key of what we've always been upset at Zach about, the turnovers. It's not about, you know, how many of them that he's committing. It's when you're committing those turnovers. It was always the fourth quarter. And you go back beyond, you know, just last year. There's several years previously that in that fourth quarter, that was kind of how Matt and I expected it to go down. Like, we expected that stepping out of bounds on the baseline. We expected that ball to be dribbled off his foot. We expected him to step on the line and you know, be an over and back. You know, we expected those things. Sadly, we expected those things to happen from Zach. So it's not about how many, it's about when he's doing it. And like Will just articulated, those numbers are definitely backing it up. So, and that, like you said, Will, it all plays in to leading to him being that dude who gets that kind of recognition, coming through in the clutch, balling out like that, getting those turnovers down, getting those wins, ending up on, you know, getting those postseason accolades. Like, it's time for him to get those things. It's just time. It's just time for him to have those things in his game, man. And I know it's 10 years in, but you can still figure out how to not turn the ball over 20 years in. You can still figure that stuff out, man.
You mentioned the frustration of fourth quarter turnovers, Dave, and I was actually looking at in-game splits of Zach and the turnover thing, and it's interesting that you brought up the specific clutch splits, Will. and the problem that Zach has had there. Because this past season, you want to hear Zach's turnover by quarter numbers, first, second, third, fourth. 51 first quarter turnovers, 44 second quarter turnovers, 54 third quarter turnovers, 43 fourth quarter turnovers. So it's not that he's just like turned the ball over like crazy in the fourth quarters, but it is the clutch moments.
And 13 of them came in games with the score 5 points or fewer in the last 5 minutes.
Numbers, man. Numbers!
Stat pack.
It is crazy to think about that because, Bulls fans can probably think of a dozen examples off the top of their head of clutch scenario, tight game, one possession game. Bulls have possession to either come from down a bucket or try to get a one bucket lead in a tie game. And Zach LaVine turns the ball over in a play that you can't even call a play because all you're left doing is shaking your head saying, what the hell was that? Get rid of that. Please.
Get it out. Tired of it, man.
It's like you said, people wondering whether or not Zach has another level to his game coming into year 10. Clearly, DeMar DeRozan, his teammate, is a wonderful example of someone who can prove to you that even when they're over the hill, which at the NBA is 30, they can still improve. They can still get better if they continue to dominate what they're good at and even just fine-tune some of the things that really make them an elite offensive weapon.
The other addition I want to make is that, like, going back to what my stat was about coming off the ball more, I think to me that's a stat that represents a mindset shift for Zach. And I don't want this to seem like it's a demotion for him. Like, I don't want him to, like, take less shots or, like, get rid of the ball and, like, only let DeMar touch it. Like I said, Zach has proven that he can be an elite A1 scorer. But I think for the Bulls to take a next step, there has to be a mindset shift with everybody on the team, Zach included. And I think Zach needs to be at the forefront of that to where he's not necessarily being the A1 alpha scorer at all times in the fourth quarter. I think that will reduce some of those turnovers. But I think also it's just like, how can this, we talk about continuity, right? Like how can these guys learn how to play off of each other a little bit better? I think DeMar's skill set is a little limiting. You can't have him playing off the ball as much because he's not the shooter. He's not the movement player that Zach can be. And so I think Zach kind of leaning into that role, and I don't want it to sound like it's a 1B or a demotion or anything like that, but I think it will reflect in those numbers that you guys brought up, which are the turnovers and the All-NBA. I think Zach can be a much better, more well-rounded player if he leans into that mindset. And I don't think that mindset is a bad thing. And I certainly don't think it'll be a bad thing when the Bulls start winning more games for it.